Observing Fullerton podcast, we are interviewing Kevin Mo-Wong, Executive Director of Solidarity, which is a nonprofit based in Fullerton. Kevin, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course, it's a real pleasure to have you. So, if you could tell me a little bit about the background story of Solidarity, like how was it created and when was it created? What was your role?
Yeah, so it started way back in 2002. It was a bunch of college students who were going to Hope International University, which is it's a private Christian college. So a lot of our faith, we were trying to figure out how do you live out our faith in a way that is that could actually really benefit the city and didn't just hurt the city. Because at that time, a lot of churches were doing things that could have been harmful for different areas. So we're trying to figure out how do we do this and how do we live out our authentic faith in a meaningful sort of way. And so it started off with us just trying to do random service projects or one-time acts of kindness, and pretty soon that started to feel more and more empty and hollow. And so what we were realizing is that we were missing a crucial piece of long-term relationship. We wanted to get in a place where we can invest in long-term and just be there. And so that's how we stumbled into the Garnett neighborhood, which is off of Placentia and Yorba Linda. And we connected with the city-run facility over there and told them we had an organization that would love to help out in any sort of way. And the guy who was running it was this man named Eddie Persiaga. And he said, well, we only do direct services here. Do you guys do you guys know how to run an after-school program? And our executive director at that time, Tommy Nixon, was like, yeah, sure. We know how to run it. We can totally do that. And so our literal first day of after-school program was me and Tommy walking up and down the street asking little kids to, hey, little kid, you want to come to our after-school program, which is the worst way to start an after-school program. I don't know what mom in her right mind was like, yeah, go ahead. I trust those grown adults. It'll be fine to hang out with them. But it was really our first entry into the neighborhood, and after that we started to learn more of what the neighborhood needed and wanted and tried to shape our programs around that.
So you mentioned it a little bit earlier, and I'm getting curious now. What were the churches doing at that time that you didn't quite agree with? If you want to answer that question.
Well, it was I came out of kind of the evangelical movement, so a lot of it was converting was the number one thing, and when I kind of looked back at my faith and what I thought Jesus was doing, it was all about love, and it just didn't seem to equate in the same way. And there was tons of churches that were doing really good jobs at it too, but there were also some cringy moments, I think, back in late 1990s, early 2000s.
Yeah. So here I'm imagining this is a bunch of college students, and you guys are like, we want to do more services and projects, so you just start an after-school program. Yeah. Is that exactly what happened?
That's basically what happened. We didn't have any clue what we were doing. Some of us were a part of different after-school programs in the past. We kind of just collectively brought together all of our understanding of how to do it, and we experimented a lot, and we probably did a lot of things that weren't beneficial for the neighborhood in the beginning, and just had to grow and learn how to adapt and get better at it.
Yeah, you just had to learn from your mistakes. So when did Solidarity become a nonprofit?
That was in 2002. We applied for our 501c3, and then by 2004, I think, is when we actually got everything finalized in it.
So what was that 2-year journey like?
I didn't have as much of my hands into that. It was our former executive director. So it was quite a process, I think, for him to get it all done, if I remember everything correctly. We really needed a lawyer. We really needed an accountant. And fortunately, a couple of those people came around just miraculously and said, hey, I heard you're trying to do this. I can offer some help. And so that got us along our way, and it's turned out fairly well so far.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I was browsing through your website, and I saw that there are these 5 barriers that Solidarity kind of works to overcome. They are education inequity, youth violence, food and financial insecurity, broken immigration system, and lack of representation in places of influence. So if you could tell me a little about each of those.
Yeah, well, to start off with educational inequity, I think we really saw the difference during the pandemic, because our students, they were struggling, and the pandemic hit them when everything went to distance learning. They kept hearing stories of their peers who came from more middle-class, affluent neighborhoods, that they were able to get into private tutors that were coming to there, or they were making little learning pods. The parents were setting that up, or the parents didn't have to go to work, so the parents were able to stay home and help the kids navigate through the whole entire online learning system. And our kids were just at a loss, and some of our kids didn't have all the tools to be able to do it, and the school district stepped up massively. They were getting computers out to all the kids and Wi-Fi access spots and all these things to help equalize things or help make it more equitable. But that was part of the things where we saw it like really face to face for educational inequity. And so our drive there is just to help resource our neighbors and give them all the things that they can use so that they can have a successful academic career, whatever way they choose to go in that. We try not to prescribe anything for them, like they have to go to college or it's all about four-year university, but it's really what they feel like they really want to do, and then how do we help them chase their dreams in that. But make sure that things are equitable and they are getting the resources that they want to be able to achieve that. Tell me if this is too long, because that was just one.
Totally fine.
The second one, youth violence. We come from two neighborhoods that we're in solidarity, are traditionally gang-influenced communities. So we've had a lot of shootings or stabbings, people getting beat up, and then there's a lot of stories of just violence within the home that we've heard of and stuff like that. And so we're trying to reduce that. We do that mostly through character development, mentoring, connecting them to adults who just want to see a better life for them and try to help them out in those sort of ways. A lot of our kids are incredibly resilient and they've gone through a ton of things, but they are still positive contributors to the community, beautiful neighborhood leaders that come out of that. Let's see what the next one is. The broken immigration system. So that one has been tough. I remember I didn't know too much about it. I'm fourth generation Chinese American, so my great grandfather dealt with a lot of it coming in, and so a lot of our kids, after they're starting to graduate high school and they were trying to figure out what they're going to do next, whether they go to university or work, they're just like, Kev, I don't know what I'm going to do next year because I can't really work right now and I'm having a hard time finding funding to be able to go to college. And he's like, I just don't have my papers. I'm like, you don't have your papers? Let's just go get your papers. Think it's an easy thing to do, right? We can get the documents you need. And slowly, as we got into it, we started to realize, man, the immigration system is broken. It's very complex. It's super hard to navigate, especially if English is your second language on all this, trying to do these things. So through that, my colleague, Bethany Anderson, started up Camino Immigration Services, which it allows all sorts of immigration services, anything from DACA to asylum cases to family petitions. And we're able to help some of our neighbors and all of Orange County people, our clients, try to get any sort of immigration relief that they can get. So that's been a huge one. The fourth one is food and financial insecurity. Again, during the pandemic, that really was apparent, and we started to recognize that a lot of our families were having to make the decisions on whether to pay their cell phone bill or pay their electricity bill, or keep food on the table, or pay another loan bill that they had, their credit card bill. And so it was just craziness for them. So we started to, for the first time, make a switch from a lot of our programs in the past were all empowerment programs, equipping programs. This is the first time we ever stepped into relief work, and so that was actually getting cash into the hands of our neighbors. During the pandemic, we raised like $65,000 and just sent out $1,000 or $500 relief checks to about, I can't remember, 115 families. So that was really, really, really helpful during that time. It wasn't enough and still needed more, but that was a small little thing we could do. And then we kept up food distribution through that whole entire time, so we distribute food to now it's lessened a lot, which is a good thing. We do about 40 to 80 families, I think, this next year. We'll do a week. And then the last one is a lack of representation in places of influence. And this is really my kind of like passion area. It seemed like in the past, there was a lot of decisions that were made about our neighborhood and our community by people who were not really fully informed by the neighbors or the community, right? And so we started to see this trend just happen over and over and over. And I think things have changed a lot more recently for the better. But we are always looking for ways to elevate and amplify the voice of our community. There's so many strong, amazing, beautiful leaders who have a lot to give to the city of Fullerton. But often they're not the ones who are asked to be on the city committees, or they're not the ones who are in the ears of our city council. Again, more recently, it's changed a ton. Our city council has been super active, especially in our two neighborhoods, listening to the moms and to the people there. But it's all kind of like, how do we elevate their voices, allow the things that they're concerned about to shape the different policies and the different directions that are being made overall on the neighborhood that directly affect them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
wow.
that was a lot.
That's incredible. No, that's good. I think I wanted to know about all of it. And more stuff that I found browsing through your website was that you have these 3 initiatives that you tackle these obstacles with, these barriers with. Those are education, neighborhood, and immigration initiatives. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so those 3 initiatives really house all of our programs, and each of our programs are specifically designed to address at least one of the barriers, if not 2 of them. Mm-hmm. So in the education initiative, we have both of our after-school programs in both neighborhoods for elementary kids, and then we also have them for youth. And so those obviously affect educational inequity and then also the youth violence. And then in our neighborhood programs, we have these 2 groups. We call them Mama Stay Maple and Mama Stay Garnett. And really it's the moms that are just hanging out, really strong neighborhood leaders that are coming together to get trainings, access to different opportunities, building community, building safety within the community and the neighborhood, and then also coming around to do some like initial steps of community organizing. So listening to their voices, helping them shape the organization of solidarity, as well as the different things that we want to tackle as a community. And so yeah, that's been really fun for me in those areas, seeing those moms kind of stand up and throw a lot of like fun events that we can invite the rest of the community, the rest of the city to see, so that they could share beautiful things about their own culture that maybe not the rest of Fullerton always has access to or always understands. Why are we celebrating Dia de los Muertos? You know, the only thing I know about it is cocoa, and so now they get to come over to our neighborhood, have some amazing food, see a beautiful ofrenda, learn about the history of it, learn about why the Mexican culture celebrates that, and it's just like a great learning opportunity where almost power dynamics are flipped. No longer are they the only ones who are receiving, but they're actually the moms who are able to teach and speak and share wisdom that they've gathered over the decades and share it with the rest of the city. So they're an asset for the city.
Yeah, and they throw truly incredible events.
They're so fun.
Yeah.
We really enjoy them. And also housed in the neighborhood initiative is TILT, which is our gang intervention prevention program. It's really targeting the students who are probably find themselves in kind of more at-risk situations. And so what we do, there's 2 guys that lead that, Matt and Tim Anderson. They're both twin brothers, and they do an amazing job of taking these kids out of the neighborhood and the community, trying to emulate some of the things that the gang has been calling to them, or some of the maybe the perceived pulls towards the gang, which is like a deep sense of family and belonging, and then also kind of a element of risk. And so what they do is they take them out of the neighborhood and they do all sorts of fun excursion, outdoor adventure things. So anything from rock climbing to camping, hiking, fishing, deep sea fishing. They all do all these fun things. So it's great. They'll take the kids out to Joshua Tree, and you have these kids who have grown up in this gang-influenced culture where they're not really afraid of gunshots or stabbings, but you get them out into the middle of Joshua Tree where it's pitch black and there's coyotes howling and they all get really freaked out and scared. But there's been a lot of really beautiful bonding moments that have happened from that. We focus a lot on character development. It's all trauma-informed now. Yeah. And then the last one is the Immigration Initiative, which houses Camino Immigration Services, and I explained that earlier.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like I'm testing you. This is your AP exam. The oral version. Yeah, it's a lot. Like, what have you done your whole life? Explain. So, no, that's truly amazing, because the Mamas Say Maple group, their stuff, I've been following kind of on social media. I've never been to an event myself, and it's just, as you said, the costumes and the outfits and the dances, food, all of it just looks so amazing. So yeah, really shout out to Mamas Say Maple group for that.
Martha Sanalias and Jasmine Perez over in Garnet.
Yeah. So, you mentioned this when you were talking about the obstacles and the barriers earlier, but everything was coming back to the pandemic. This happened in the pandemic, that happened in the pandemic. So how did you and how did Solidarity cope with that era?
It was difficult, I think. At first, when we weren't, so much of our programs are relationally driven, so when we weren't allowed to be face-to-face with people, or engaging them in like having a bunch of kids in a room together, we really had to reshape how we did like everybody did, how we did our programs. And so we were drawing at straws, trying to figure out how do you recreate this family belonging feeling when everybody's in distance learning mode, or we're looking through a Zoom screen to try to figure it out. We had to just get really creative on that. And that's kind of what brought us into the relief work, because we knew that we couldn't gather people together to do the normal type of equipping programs that we did. But we could still help the neighborhood and figure out exactly what they need in this immediate moment. And so when we talked to the neighbors and asked them about things, it was things like, we just need food, we need to work, we need jobs, we need money. And so we started to move into that era of stuff. And so I'm hoping that we don't have to be in relief work forever, because I think that's a sign that the neighborhood is progressing forward if we don't have to do those things. But in this time, I heard these stories of, after the Great Depression, it was the communities of color, like while the rest of America kind of took a couple of years to like restart and jump back into normal things, communities of color, it took almost a decade for them to start to feel like they've partially caught up. But then you have a whole decade where everybody else progressed ahead and they were still stuck. And so I can see how things like a pandemic or a Great Depression or the Great Recession, in 2008, have a heavier weight or a heavier burden that communities of color end up feeling.
Right, especially 2008, I think those effects are still felt to this day. Like, our generation grew
really
up with it, right? And then, as you said, the pandemic, technically we're still not out of that era, right? The pandemic is still here, that era is still here, the economic instability, like, we're not even going to see the full extent of it until the next few years.
No, that could be scary. We don't know what's fully ahead. But.
Right, it's a lot. So, you led the organization through the pandemic.
Yes, through the pandemic, you're right.
Yeah.
So in 2018 is when Tommy stepped off of leadership, and then I came in as executive director. Yeah, so for the past 5-ish years I've been leading.
Right. How has that experience been?
It's been, I'm a really good number two. I've known this about myself for a long time. If I'm like a VP in an organization, I think I'm really good at that. It's harder for me to be a number one. I've been trying to test the waters and learn how to do it. And I think for me personally, like, I didn't know my own real leadership strengths until I had stepped into number one. I kind of just emulated my predecessor. And for all the amazing, beautiful things that Tommy was able to do, I was probably trying too hard to be a Tommy instead of being a Kevin. And so I think in this time, especially going through the pandemic, I started to find my own voice and my own style of leadership. And then also, the other big thing is that I stepped into a lot more. I realized I couldn't do it on my own, and so there was just so many more opportunities for collaboration that popped up. Whether it was running the elementary after-school program with Hoya Scholars, or getting into different grants with OC United or some other local My Safe Harbor programs to be a part of the the North Orange County Public Safety Collaborative. Being a part of those type of things brought not only more resources to Solidarity, but also brought like operational learning and understanding from people who ran organizations for a long time that were able to speak into Solidarity and help shape us. So I just became more of a sponge during that time, and the pandemic was like a good time for me to learn how to lead a little bit better. So that was probably the biggest impact of it on me personally.
Yeah, and you mentioned working with Hoya Scholars as well as OC United. You're part of Fullerton Collaborative as well.
Yes.
So you could tell a bit about that journey and how that how it feels to be a part of this amazing group of people.
Yeah, so Fullerton Collaborative has been really fun. I originally was Tommy Nixon, the founding executive director, was a part of Fullerton Collaborative. He was the board chair or whatever it was. And then when he came off of Solidarity, they were looking to have another representative from Solidarity be there. And so I was like, okay, I guess this is just naturally what I should do. Yeah. And I got in, and I remember my first few meetings there, I was like, what? I don't even understand what the heck we're doing. Don't tell Debbie. But I slowly caught up after a while and started to see the impact that the whole entire collaborative has within the city. And it really opened up a lot more opportunities. I feel like a lot of the collaborations and the funding that we're a part of now is because we've developed these strong relationships within the collaborative, with OC United, with Hoya we knew from before, but OC, it just helps strengthen a lot of relationships.
Right, and you all can, work with each other's strengths.
Yeah.
And work together to make Fullerton overall a much better community. So it's just truly amazing. I'm kind of like a bystander in those meetings. Every time that I do attend, it's like, I love seeing what's happening. Yeah, so you have a Flip the Ratio program that's on your website. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so what was it, 2019, before the pandemic, we stumbled across this daunting statistic that was out there, and it said that in middle-class communities, the ratio of age-appropriate books to kids is 13 to 1. So every student in a middle-class neighborhood had at least 13 age-appropriate books. But then when it came to low-income communities, the ratio flipped, and it was drastic. There was only one book for every 300 kids that are out there, meaning that one kid would have to have 300 of his friends come over to his house to be able to read this one age-appropriate book. And we're like, this is ridiculous. It actually infuriated me. It made me really angry. I'm like, this seems like such an easy fix. Why can't we do this? And so Solidarity set out to start to partner with different organizations and bookstores and churches in the area, and just did like an easy book drive type of thing. And I'm okay at fundraising, but I'm really good at book raising, because it's the easiest ask in the world. And you just ask people to go onto our Amazon list, find a book that maybe you have read with your child that you really love, and will you bless somebody in our neighborhood so that we can get those books out to them. So we started off, our first year we raised about 300 books. We set our goal on 450 this year, and we're gonna hit that for sure. We'll definitely have that. And then the fun part is getting all the books into the homes of the community. And we realize that this is just the first part of building equity, right?
Right.
We're equipping them so that they have the tools necessary. The second part of it is, how do we help come alongside the families and start to develop a love of reading and literature in the families, in the homes. And so we're working on a second step program with the moms groups to see if we can start to develop some of that love of reading in the community, and strengthen what is already there, because there is some families that just love to read. So.
Right. I think another obstacle that exists for lower income families is that reading requires leisure time.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And to do it as a family, everybody, so
it's hard.
It is definitely very difficult. I think as college students, when we try to read for just fun, outside of our school stuff, like that's practically impossible, daunting task, because you always feel guilty. Mm-hmm. So to imagine to not be working and to sit down and read, that I think is a whole other level.
Yeah.
And
that's one of the things I think we've run into the most, unfortunately, because of the situations that many of our families find themselves in. They sometimes are in a survival mindset. Exactly. I gotta make this paycheck. I gotta hustle and get this money. Otherwise, we're gonna get kicked out of our apartment. We'll be homeless, or we're not gonna be able to provide food for our kids. Like all these type of things. And so when Solidarity is always trying to see if we can get our community to think of these larger systemic policy issues, that's not on their mind all the time. And granted, it shouldn't be, because they need to get these core things figured out first. And so that's why I really still believe full-heartedly in the food and financial insecurity. We got to help our families who are just struggling to have a meal or frequent meals. We got to get them those type of things before they can ever get to a point of really just hoping that they can dream about how their voice can influence a community and neighborhood.
Right. So I'm very fond of this program in particular. So I just appreciate the work and the insight that you're bringing into this. I just appreciate Solidarity's work. So you've been a part of this nonprofit for a while, basically ever since it started, and you've been leading it for the past 5 years now. What advice would you have to other rising nonprofits, either in this area or just overall?
I think some of the mistakes I made personally was that I would prescribe what success looked like for our neighbors, instead of listening to them and really understanding what they wanted to see. What are the markers of a success for them? So I take it back to the educational thing. I thought coming into the neighborhood, if I can help all these kids graduate and get involved in a 4-year university and go on, maybe get their master's, then I'm doing a great job as working in community development. But that's not the case for everybody, and that's not the case for every individual in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. They don't always want that. Education's a great thing, but sometimes families want something that's different. And so instead of prescribing what does success look like for their family, listening to them, hearing the kids that really have a deep passion and desire for automotive work, and they love tinkering around in a garage and want to do that, and then supporting them and giving them the network or helping to resource ways for them to get into a trade school type of thing. That's more of, I think, what is helpful. But that starts with the key thing of really letting my ego go and trying to listen to my neighbors, understanding that they're the experts on what's best for their community, not me.
Right, because that's
Yeah,
what a nonprofit is all about,
Yeah,
right? It's not for your profit; it's for
Yeah,
the
exactly.
community. Yeah,
It took me 20 years to learn that.
well, better late than never,
Yes.
right? At least you learned it and you
Yeah.
accepted, and now you're working on it. So I think that's great. So, who else do you think we should interview on this podcast that's doing great work in Fullerton?
Oh yeah, I saw that question. I was like, oh man, I think you've gotten pretty much everybody that I would have called or would have said on the list.
Oh, we're so ahead of the game.
Have you guys interviewed Debbie yet from the
She's
collaborative?
next on list.
Oh, good. So I think Debbie would be a great person. Jason Phillips, who runs Fullerton ACT, which is kind of the faith wing of the collaborative. And so working with a lot of the local churches around here, he's been really good. I enjoy conversation with him. I would love personally if you could get like the director of the Fullerton Arboretum. That's like my favorite place in all of Fullerton. It's the Cal State Fullerton Arboretum. I would love to hear how he got into his work, or I think it's a guy.
Yeah, we'll look into it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, and how he got that job. That's just fascinating to me. It's a great, beautiful
Yeah, we need to
place.
tap into the Cal State Fullerton arena. We haven't done that yet. We're so exclusive
Yeah.
on Fullerton, and not on purpose, but we're all from Fullerton College, so Fullerton
Yeah,
College
okay.
and this area and the Maple, like
Uh-huh.
that's kind of our. But we need
Gotcha.
to branch out into more of Fullerton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. My colleague Bethany Anderson knows a lot about, she runs Camino Immigration Services. She's a wealth of knowledge kind of on the impact of immigration policies and how it's affecting families here in Fullerton. She might be a really interesting interview. Who else? Man, I can't even think. I should have prepared better for that one.
That's okay. I think those are some fantastic suggestions.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do one a week, so this will
Yeah.
carry us through
There
to
you
the
go.
next new year.
Very good.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for being here today. We
Of
learned a
course.
lot from you as also aspiring college students who we don't know what we're going to do with our lives, but you know.
Yeah, it takes forever to figure that out. But.
Yeah. Are you still figuring it out?
Yeah, I think so. In some ways I am.
Yeah.
I don't foresee myself being at Solidarity forever.
Yeah.
Definitely think there's going to be a new career path for me, so I'm trying to figure out what that might be in the future. Who knows?
Do we have any hints?
Not yet.
Not yet?
yeah.
Okay.
Still trying to figure
we don't
that one
know. I'll just try to catch you at the collaborative meetings
There you
and
go.
figure it out. Kevin, did you figure it out yet?
Not
What's
yet.
next? What's next?
Oh man, I got to figure that out.
Yeah, you told the wrong person.
Yeah.
So, one last question.
Yes.
How do people get involved with Solidarity? Like, what can people do to help you do your job
Yeah.
better?
Easiest way is just to go to our website, solidaritynpo.org, a nonprofit organization. On there, there's different ways to volunteer or donate or just become more aware of the different things that are affecting our neighbors and the community that surrounds them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, donate, volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here today.
no
It
worries.
was lovely having,
was fun.
just hearing you, testing you on your life story. What have you done? But,
Yeah.
I think you have done and you are doing some incredible work in
Thank
Fullerton,
you.
and I see the effects of that, and he covers the effects of that, so it's amazing. So yeah, I got to learn a lot from you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay.